Hi, I'm Natalia, and this is the Accountability in Action series hosted by the Walz Group CPA, where we talk to community leaders and business owners to give you industry insights. My name's Natalia. I'm the marketing manager at the Walz Group CPA firm. We have a very exciting episode for our Accountability in Action series. We are here at the Benchmark program in Lancaster City. We have two great guests. We have Tim Kirshner, CPA of the Walz Group and principal, and we have Will Keifer, who is the founder and executive director of the Benchmark program. So let's start there. What is the Benchmark program? Who are you? Who do you serve? And let's hear more about it.
Sure. Well, thanks, Natalia, and thanks, Tim. Appreciate you both being here in our studio. Benchmark is known as the weightlifting program, mentoring through fitness. We have become so much more over the years. So now Benchmark still opens its doors at night to serve really 70, 80 kids that show up to do the open gym program. And they'll be here to box, to weightlift, but also to do their homework, to look for jobs, to have a bite to eat, to use our Women's Strength and Fitness Center upstairs, to use this podcast studio. I mean, the opportunities here are endless. What's grown out of that program is really what makes us unique now. We work strictly with juvenile probation and the Children Youth Agency to serve highly at-risk youth kids who maybe aren't in other services or not succeeding in those services. We work in the detention center. We are a resource to McCaskey High School as a suspension alternative program. And then even beyond that, we have a screen printing shop upstairs where we give kids hands-on workforce development. And some of our kids are hired here as peer mentors. So,
excellent.
Saying it's the fitness-based mentoring program is partially true, but we think today we're a good bit more than that.
Yes, it sounds like there's a lot of depth in the program, and I've watched quite a few of the videos, and the students seem to love it here.
Yeah.
And touring around the studio as well, the space here is super cool. They have the fitness centers. They have the male and female too, so it's separated, which is cool. And I did see the T-shirt printing area too. So
there's always something going on
Very
here.
diverse.
Very awesome. And the Benchmark program is one of our clients, our nonprofit clients. So we're excited to dive into a little bit of the behind the scenes of having a nonprofit, what it means, and talk about the accounting side of things. So Will, as a leader, what are you ultimately responsible for when it comes to the organization's overall health and impact?
Yep. So a lot of my role today is to make sure that we're charting the right course as we go forward. So my work is in painting the vision and making sure that the team is aligned with that vision. And I get a lot of input from our team to make sure we're headed the right way. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, the viability, the financial health of the organization falls on me. And that doesn't just mean in fundraising dollars. It means on stewarding the dollars that we have effectively, making sure that we're making wise decisions with that money. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, if Benchmark made a poor financial decision, it would reflect right back on me. Certainly, I have to make sure that we don't do anything that hurts the population that we're serving. But I also can't do anything that would hurt the financial viability of Benchmark so that it can be here for years to come.
And most people start nonprofits out of the goodness of their heart to start a program to really help people. And with that also comes the finance side of things and wearing many hats. So it seems like you've got that down, and partnering with Walz Group has certainly helped reach another level, like you had mentioned earlier. So we're excited to talk about that too.
Yep.
So Tim, when a nonprofit like Benchmark comes to the Walz Group, what are they usually hoping to gain beyond basic accounting services?
Yeah, you have your accounting services, and obviously we have the kind of the compliance items of tax. Some things we do help you maybe with some internal controls to help make sure there's some segregation of duties. But I think most importantly, what you're getting is an experienced team. We have our Walz Group's been in existence for over 45 years. And we have probably some people in our firm that have been doing nonprofit work for 40 years. And we're just a passionate group. A lot of people in our firm serve on nonprofit boards. We work on nonprofits in our profession, and it's really helped us to kind of understand where you're coming from, your needs, so we can actually really walk alongside you and help you to get where you want to go.
Yeah. I'd imagine you all have to educate as well as deploy the service. You just mentioned it, Tim, the segregation of duties. That is something that I had to learn all about. We have a bunch of different verticals at Benchmark, different funding streams, and they have to be kept separate, and we have to be able to show how they are. And that was a learning process for me. Somebody had to teach me that. I imagine that's a big part of the role too.
It's so important that we come in and not just be a compliance-driven accounting firm, but really educate, make sure that not only you, but leadership in your organization, your board members, that we can come in and provide that education.
Yep.
And really seeing the company as part of the team.
Yep.
So helping you get to your goals. So how does that visibility, how is that important to you as a leader?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's nice to not have to be dreading the outreach at whatever time it is of year. I don't feel that way when we work with Walz. It's nice to have a conversation a couple of times throughout the year so you can plan. Your team, your board, our staff has to be aware that the decisions that are being made on a daily basis map out to a bigger outcome at year end. They have to see that, or else they're not stewarding the resources well. And again, having an accounting partner that's walking alongside you helps your team see that. Hey, if I spend $50 on this today, that's not an inconsequential decision. That decision is going to come back up in a couple months when we're looking at the end of the quarter and eventually the end of the year. So having that visibility from the start is critical.
Absolutely. And Tim, so why is it critical for nonprofit leaders to really understand their numbers, even if they're not preparing them themselves?
Well, I guess first and foremost, they have a responsibility to the people they serve. I think you have a responsibility to your donors.
Yep.
And when donors give, they want to make sure that when they are giving, that you're utilizing the funds in the way that you explain that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, especially in today's day and age where you see fraud everywhere, having an accounting firm's stamp on it is paramount. So it's definitely important. That's a great point.
Yep. Yeah, I can't imagine having a supporter come and ask to see finances of the organization and not wanting to share that information with them. It should all be public, except for the protected donor data. There are privacy rules around that, but you should be confident in your organization's willingness to share the finances with someone who's considering supporting you, because
Absolutely.
that is the differentiating factor. I worked hard for these dollars. I want to use them to support your organization, but I can't do that if I don't trust that you're going to do well with them.
There's a transparency like a required transparency with
Yes.
filing Form 990s in the Pennsylvania Bureau.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, to your point, a donor comes in, they want to see your facility, and then they start asking you questions about, do you budget? And, what is your operating budget? And how do you make sure that the money I give you goes to the resources I want? Mm-hmm. And being able to have those answers just solidifies the opportunity to bring in good donations.
Yep, not having that stuff ready to go is understandable if you're at the beginning of your nonprofit journey. But really, when you get to a developed and established organization, the end of the line is when you can't furnish that information anymore. If you want to go far in the nonprofit world, you have to have your ducks in a row. You have to have those answers to those questions.
And how long has Benchmark been around?
February will be 12 years.
12 years,
So,
okay.
in those first couple of years, Benchmark's just scraping by, and all of our money went into the operating costs of the rent and stuff like that. But now, every single month when we report out to the people who support us, the contract agencies, the grants, there is a clear separation of what funding went where and how was it accounted. That happens on a monthly basis now.
So how does knowing that financial information influence your decisions when making goals and setting expectations for the program?
Well, if that funding comes in and covers certain portions of our overhead, you have to make sure there's no supplantation of those funds, because those entities are looking at that right away. If I gave, if Benchmark took $100,000 from this person and $100,000 from that person, how do I make sure they're not paying the same person from both of those chunks of money? And the other thing, so that's on our end to make sure that's not happening. But really, when you're making staff decisions, when you're making new program decisions, you need to understand exactly where the funding is coming from and for how long, so that you can make a smart decision about developing a new entity or a new program here, or putting this person in that role over there. If you just think all the money comes in and piles into one big funnel and goes down to the bottom line, it doesn't work like that.
I think part of your strategy, the overall initiative of the nonprofit, is to determine maybe what grants are out there for you.
Yep.
And so grants are a wonderful thing. There's plenty of grants out there to write for and get in. But at the end of the day, you do have that back-end compliance to say, here's what the grant is, here are the requirements, and providing those financial reports to say that I, in fact, met your requirements.
Yeah, the Walz team has been great about this. Benchmark is unique in that our funding, and again, this is not private info, this is how we've been able to grow. We have donations that have always come in to support the operation. We have grants that come in to support the operation. And then we have contract partners who we deliver a service in return for a fee, and that accounts for a huge portion of our operating costs. And Walz has had to help us separate all that out, line it up so that when we do our 2026 budget, we're looking at, okay, how much do we know is coming in from these sources and how much do we have to raise?
Yes.
And that has to happen every single year.
Yeah, and continuing on with the grants conversation, I'm sure every nonprofit was sort of affected by this last year when there was tremendous budget cuts and changes with donations and funding. So just wanted to get your point of view on that. How did that impact you, if at all?
Yep. So what impacted us the most? We communicate, our donor support community is unique in that most of our supporters know this space, have physically come here to see the programming and understand what's going on here. So we were able to maintain a very strong, steady level of support, specifically for essential items like food when the food stamp issue kind of came and passed. That carried forward in a nice way. What slowed down big time was the payments coming back from contract vendors. The county was doing the best they could and did a very good job up until they could no longer do that. So we were bracing for that. The school district experienced delays. Our state government grants, by the way, paid on time.
That's
It's
incredible.
very interesting.
Yeah.
But we experienced these slowdowns from our other contract partners, and this was where Benchmark was in a good place. Had we not had cash reserves to continue to operate, we would not have been able to sustain those operations. But we were made whole because all our contract amounts were paid out, but we had to burn through a significant chunk of operating cash, which was then replenished, but that was how we managed it. And I know many organizations were not so lucky. If they didn't have those stores to kind of weather that dry season, they had to make some really tough decisions.
And was that something that the Walz Group helped you navigate that situation?
Yeah, there was a lot of conversation around that. We were well in advance of it. So the state budget impasse had been going on for a while. We didn't know how bad it would get. It was kind of compounded by some of the federal stuff, but we were ready, and we made those decisions on a timeline. And luckily, the faucet was turned back on at the right time. We didn't have to do anything drastic.
Well, when you see it coming, and that's a wonderful thing, and if you have something to fall back on, but to be able to plan ahead of time and, go to a financial resource or donors and make an ask for a short term, to know it's coming is just a testament to your organization and the fact that you have your finger firmly on the pulse.
Yeah, have a rainy day fund. Have a rainy day fund when you need it.
That's a wonderful thing.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you were able to weather that storm. So if things sort of tapered out more stability now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Things are back to normal. When you're in a nonprofit position, your grants need to have a sustainability piece to them. So you're constantly looking for the end of these grants. You're planning and you're trying to figure out how will you sustain that resource going on. That's the struggle that we've always had. All of us have that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we'd rather have that struggle than wondering when our bills are going to be paid from contracts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for touching base on that. I'm sure a lot of nonprofits experienced something similar, especially in Lancaster, where we are blessed to have tons of nonprofits in the area, which is great.
And a lot of resources, the Extraordinary Give and otherwise. I mean, there's seems like a vibrant community that support the nonprofits. I think you could probably always use more volunteers and supporters, but it is a vibrant community.
Yeah, I wonder often, Tim, you're making me think of it. I wonder often what Benchmark program would look like had we started in some other community. And I'm not sure it would look like it does today because here we have such a vibrant base of support, and we have county commissioners and county Department of Juvenile Probation, Children and Youth who support us, a school district who supports us, a number of charitable foundations who support us, individual donors who support us. Where else are you going to have all of those players in the same sandbox playing together? Not every community has that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
So thanks for touching base on that. So Tim, where do you most often see nonprofits struggle before they have the right accounting and advisory support in place?
Well, I think sometimes it's hard to find that right financial person. And as an executive director, I read and see and hear that you wear multiple hats.
Yes.
And so sometimes you're stretched to make sure that you're accomplishing all those things. So really to start, it's basic, financials, making sure that you have a proper chart of accounts, your banking set up, that you're doing a kind of a full set of books. And what I mean by that is not a cash basis set of books, but an accrual basis set of books where you know who you owe money, who owes you money. Yep. You're accounting for things in an economic standpoint. And so that basic premise is there. I would say another struggle is making sure that you're segregating the donor wishes. So when donors come in, the most wonderful thing is for a donor, for you to be able to go to your donor and say, hey, I really need this just for the overall operations. But sometimes donors say, well, hey, I'd like to accomplish this with my money. And then as an executive director, you have to say, does that meet our strategic goal? And I know sometimes donors are turned away because it's like that's not really part of what we do. But when you do get those donor gifts in, is it restricted? Is it temporarily restricted? Is it permanently restricted, like an endowment? And so those are the things that you have to make sure that you're paying attention to, and is certainly a struggle, even for established nonprofits, just making sure those accounting functions and those the full set of books is being kept.
Systems. You can't do it without systems. I mean, for us, we operate most of our organization off of QuickBooks. We've been okay with that system for a long time. Eventually, we'll outgrow it. And then we have a separate donor database. And those two systems have to talk together.
Yeah.
They have to capture information like you're talking about, Tim. I mean, we ran on a cash basis for years because I didn't understand accrual accounting. I don't understand it. I read a book called Financial, I'll never forget it, it's on my bookshelf. All the pages are marked up. It's called Financial Management for Non-Financial Managers. It was my Bible at the time, learning this kind of stuff. And you can get by if you're someone like me who doesn't have the background, as long as you have good systems and you have a partner checking your systems and making sure you're putting the right info in there.
So what are some of the goals that your organization has right now that your accounting partner can sort of help you grow into and achieve?
Yeah. Well, our most recent goal at this year's Extra Give was a fundraiser for a new vehicle, maybe even two. We have to pick up kids, and they have to get here to the facility. And they have to get here about the same time from different locations. So we're constantly trying to navigate, at least most recently, this need for a new vehicle. We have some bigger program goals that we're trying to work through as well about the workforce development programming that we do. So how can a kid come here and either be employed here or get the skills that they need to be employed elsewhere? That programming, for example, has looked like our Benchmark apparel shop, which has been an accounting challenge because that shop generates income. Now, it's all programmatic because kids are working in there, but that in and of itself goes beyond just we need to get a new car to, hey, we need to continue to develop this program, but it's unique in its impact on our bottom line because now we're selling stuff that people have ordered. Kids are producing those orders as a part of their programming, so it's interesting.
Some real life experience.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Getting their hands dirty, selling it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And how close are you to getting those vans?
So we were able to purchase one vehicle.
Okay.
And we started there. Again, thinking about our accounting for the year, we looked at the outcome of which funding streams were going to diminish this year, which were going to come online, and we thought, okay, let's go ahead and get one vehicle now. Let's sit on this cash just for a little while. Let's get about mid-year when our numbers are going to tick up. Let's get the second vehicle then. I have to say this, which is an idea that the team has circulated, which I think is pretty fun. Perhaps in addition to going to get a second vehicle, that second vehicle is a little more of a small car, a Corolla, a Honda Accord. And could we get some grant money to put on the passenger side a driver's school brake so that we could then get a grant to learn how to teach driver's ed, purchase the vehicle, equip the vehicle with the brake, which would give us the safety to do the instruction, and then have a benchmark driver's school of sorts. So that's one little iteration on our second vehicle we're kind of sitting on. Yeah.
Do you find a lot of students are looking for that type of program, that assistance in driving, and especially in the city, since you work in the city, maybe a lot of people don't even have cars?
I hope someone listening to this reaches out and says,
Yeah.
hey, Will, here's the resource you don't know about.
Yes.
But right now, I
Yeah.
do not know about a resource for kids who, in truth, will not be able to afford it to get driver's ed. I got driver's ed through my high school.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
And that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So I think there's a huge need. But that's a little bit of a shift on what we were originally going to do.
Yeah, but that's a really cool goal. I'm glad that you mentioned that. So we'll keep an eye out and see how you guys work that out throughout the year. And hopefully you can get your second car soon,
Yep.
your second van.
That'd be excellent.
Yeah. So, Will, how valuable is, we're going to talk about the nitty gritty tax compliance, knowing that compliance, filings, and deadlines are being handled correctly?
There are a few things in an organization that if you are not attentive to them will sink the organization. Being sneaky or messy or careless with your nonprofit's accounting period is one of those things that will sink the whole organization. So knowing that I can have a partner checking my work, correcting my work, amending my process, that allows me to focus on the program so that I don't have to worry about being blindsided by something that I did wrong or mistakenly missed. I don't have to worry about that. I can just focus on the program work. So it's critical.
If anyone knows Dan, he's very on top of it and
That is
detailed,
for sure.
detailed oriented. So Tim, what are some tax compliance areas nonprofit leaders typically underestimate and until there's like an actual problem?
Well, I mentioned it before, donor restrictions, internal. The donor finds out that you didn't use their funds the way they wanted to. You can really get yourself into some hot water, including just, out in the community, people talking. On a more of a financial and tax side, as you mentioned before, you mentioned audit. You have the Pennsylvania Bureau of Charitable Organizations kind of dictates based on receipts, certain receipts, on what level of financial reporting you have to do as a nonprofit. Yeah. And I think in a way, I mean, it's an accountability for the nonprofits to say, hey, if you start a nonprofit, I think the Pennsylvania Bureau of Charitable Organizations is out there to say, hey, you gotta find a way to do the reporting, and here are the criteria. And once you start getting enough funds coming in from donors and grants and other things, you actually have to have a CPA involved, and you got to have a CPA do either compiled. As you get more funds, you move up to a reviewed financial statement. And then after you get over a certain level, it was $750,000. I think it's going to go up to $1 million.
Really?
I think I know I read
news.
that. Then you have to have an audit.
Yep.
And an audit is, whether it's a for-profit or non-for-profit, or it's intensive. There are, review of your controls and corroborating evidence and making sure that, things that you say you did, you actually did. So that's it. Another thing you mentioned, and it just goes to your savvy on the business side. You mentioned the print shop or the T-shirt, and you say that you sell, and then you said, yeah, but it's a program. So I kind of chuckled because one of the compliance is what they call 990T for unrelated business, trade or business income. And so nonprofits, most think, oh, they don't pay tax. Well, there are certain circumstances where you actually do pay tax if you generate revenue from something that really isn't a direct support of your program. And then you have to file this separate form, and you have to, the tax isn't substantial, but it's still, for a nonprofit, you have to
Money out the door.
It's money out the door for tax, and no one likes paying taxes.
They don't. Yeah.
No, I got to give you the example that educated me on the topic of unrelated business income. For years, as Benchmark was getting going, we were piecing together weight equipment to build our facility out. And I was constantly on Facebook Marketplace. At the time, Craigslist was a place you could look for equipment too. So I was finding this online equipment, I was buying it, we were using it in programs. Oftentimes, because I was searching, I would see equipment that we didn't necessarily need, but that I could buy and flip it. I could just buy it, and then I could sell it to somebody else. You cannot do that. It has no relation. We settled up. It wasn't a massive amount of money or anything because thankfully it was caught quickly. But someone like me operating a nonprofit can't buy the set of dumbbells just because I happen to see them and then turn them around and sell them for $1 more and then just take the money and use it for the nonprofit. You can't do that. That's unrelated business income.
Right.
So that's how I learned about that, and we don't do that anymore.
How long into this program did you sort of start to learn these things?
Oh, it was real quick because the
Yeah.
first time I did that, thinking it was fine, it popped up in QuickBooks as income. It's not traceable in anything.
Okay.
And then the question came to me, hey, Will, where did this income come from? I said, oh, well, I bought those dumbbells for $5 and I sold them for $10.
And they
Okay, well, you
said,
can't do that.
no,
Yeah, I said, you
yep.
can't do that. So again, thankfully it was not a consequential amount of money. But again, someone like me has to learn that stuff as you go along. And that's how I know now expenses have to be programmatic. They cannot be.
Yeah, and having that partner to help you and tell you those things
Oh,
speeds it up a little bit. So
It's interesting with a partner. You obviously have your accounting firm. You're reaching out to us. During the year, we're reaching out to you, but we're not in the day to day. So day to day is having a good finance person
Yep.
that asks the question. So where's this coming from, and how do we account for this? I'd say board member strength is also
Yes.
really good. Making sure most boards have some finance person,
Yes.
and usually that finance person is put into the finance committee or treasurer type role. I know
Yep.
from experience. But it's interesting because you build that team,
Yeah.
not only with your own knowledge, but the knowledge of people you surround yourself with, just to help you to navigate the financial and other compliance matters.
Yep, that's critical. You can't do it.
yeah, and I wanted to dive into the board and talk about that. How does, from a leadership standpoint, those tax requirements being met impact your credibility with donors, grantors, and the board?
Well, you're mistaken if you think people aren't looking at that information. Yeah. They're going to they're either going to go on GuideStar, or GuideStar's the big one. There's one other one which I'm spacing on, but these are online registrations for nonprofits that give you a rating. We have a platinum rating on GuideStar. That's because we've been proactive in putting our information out there, putting out our 990s, sharing updates on our organization and the programs that we run. People are looking for that stuff. It is the differentiator. If they have $10,000 to give, they're choosing between two organizations, and one is very transparent and clear about their finances and their reporting, and the other's not. It's an easy decision for them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, that's paramount too when you're looking for grantors who are deciding where to put their funds.
mm-hmm.
So,
In that vein, before we leave that,
yeah,
is
yeah.
one of the things I know is important is the more dollars you can put to your programs, the better. So they do go on GuideStar. They're able to pull up the 990. They're able to look at your general administrative expenses versus your program and expenses. And that's also on your financial reports. Now, usually your audit and other things are only very particular to the Internal Revenue Service or other internal reports, the bank. But they do get to see 990, and not only financial transparency, but then being able to see that you're putting as many dollars as you can to the program.
Yep.
Really helps the donor make a decision that, hey, if I give them $10,000, I know that $200 of mine in theory is going to go to the program.
It's making an impact, a direct
Absolutely.
impact.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tim, that's a great point. Again, no one told me at the beginning what admin fee was. I didn't understand it. But now when we look at our organization, traditionally someone who's an executive director is not involved in the day-to-day programming, but I am. So not all of my comp is administrative. A good portion of it is, a good portion is not. But my team members who focus on fundraising, that's the portion of our budget that's admin fee.
Mm-hmm.
Our administrative assistant here at the organization, that's an admin fee.
Yeah.
That bumps that right up. And we've been trying to keep that down because it matters to people. Everyone knows some portion of your dollar is going to go to the administrative operation of the organization.
Yep.
But if it's 50 cents of that dollar, that raises eyebrows.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to make sure their money is going as close to the program as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tim, when the Walz Group starts connecting and working with a nonprofit, how do we approach that advisory position?
Well, it's really more of a collaboration. It's coming in and, really getting to know your organization and finding out where your need is, because every nonprofit's a little bit different. So I think that's, with our service on boards and our experience in nonprofit, we can't just come in as accountants or tax people and start solving your problems. It's that understanding and that background that we have, that we literally, come in and walk alongside and say, so what's going on? And, what are you dealing with? The old cliche of what are you losing sleep over? Yeah. And finding a way to solve that. And sometimes that's the accounting firm. Sometimes it's us directing you. I mentioned strong board service before, and internal finance director, all those to help.
So what comes first, the accountant or the board member?
Is what I meant. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it depends which hat you're wearing.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, you can't. Your board has to have the information to make a wise decision. Most of your board, speaking generally, is not going to have the finance background.
Correct.
But they need to understand from an accounting partner what they should be concerned about, where the red flags are, where the green lights are, and then they can make good decisions. So having great board members is a wonderful attribute. But if they're not well informed, they can't make good decisions anyway.
That's an interesting comment, and I can't recall if this is an upcoming question, but I'll mention it now.
I'm sure it is. I think we're on the same.
Are we?
Yeah.
So I've served on many boards over the years, along with a lot of my partners and employees, and finding out how, what is important to relay to the board, what is important to relay to the staff. That's huge.
Yep.
Whether it's creating a dashboard. When I get up in front of my board monthly at another association I belong to, they kid me that I only have 10 minutes to present my financial report, and which is comical. It's a running joke, but we take it very seriously. But at the end of the day, a lot of people that are serving on boards, the management and the executive director, they're like, hey, kind of put it to me straight. Like, what do I need to be concerned about? I know that the accounting function's being taken care of over here. I'm not worried about that. Tell me what I need to know.
Yep. Yeah, they want to see trends. They want to know the trends that you see that they might not see.
And how do you typically present that information to the board where they can understand, especially if they don't have a financial background?
Well, some of it can be board training. I know several of us have been asked to come in and actually speak to the board or work with either the executive director or finance person to say, hey, I need to do a board report every month, or I need to send something out every quarter. Help me to take the totality of my records from a financial end and summarize it in a meaningful way. And so we can help with that, again, because of our experience. Not so much in accounting. I mean, that helps, but in serving on boards.
Absolutely. So that's great information. So was right on the questions, is how we translate that information to the board. So making sure that they understand it. And Will, from a leadership perspective, what's helpful to you in working with an accounting or advisory partner? And this could be information that might be helpful for other nonprofits to know.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked about it a lot, but it can't go overstated. The compliance piece is very important. You as a nonprofit have to understand where your blind spots are. If they're coming from my background, which is the programmatic background, their blind spot, if it's like mine, may be on that compliance side. I'm very strong in doing what we need to do for the kids. I'm not as strong in understanding the complexities of making sure all the boxes are checked to make sure the organization stays green. I'm learning that stuff as we go. But if you don't have an accounting partner who's going to make you aware of that, then they're not doing the full extent of what they should be doing.
Advisory position.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, certainly there are someone may be able to come and look at the same numbers that you've been looking at and see a trend that you're not seeing. That is true. But for most of us in these roles, we're sharp enough and we understand the operation enough to know when a trend is going in a direction we don't like. I think the compliance for me carries a little more weight, making sure I don't step on. Again, I can dodge the landmines, but I have to know where they are.
Yeah.
Yes,
Very
which
important.
is helpful when you have that partner right next to you helping you point those out.
Yeah.
So Tim, what would you encourage nonprofit leaders to prioritize earlier rather than later?
From a financial lens, I'd say making sure you find that right, financial partner, that accounting firm. Second, in no particular order, is to make sure you get a good finance person in.
Yes.
I do see across the board, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, is, it's people sometimes say, well, it's overhead. I can't really afford that. But boy, if you get the right financial person into your organization and they're able to do the things that they're supposed to do. It allows you to focus on the programmatic items, which is really important. So, finding those right hires. Another thing, a lot of the boards I'm on, they're not glamorous. They're not a position where you just show up once a month. They're working boards.
Yep.
Hey, I need you to come on. I need you to, you're on the board. You have a certain expertise. Lend that expertise to me. So something early on is to vet board members. I think there's people that are willing to serve. I think when you're creating an organization, you have to say, what skill sets are really going to help me and this organization get to where it wants to be, and bring in on those skill sets.
Yeah, that's a great point. And how do you typically pick board members?
Well, thankfully, a good board should have their own nominating committee. And a good board
Agreed.
should work with the executive director and others at the organization to help source people, but the board can source people as well. The board knows itself. A good board should know itself. A good board should do a matrix where they clearly identify where their gaps are based off of what the organization knows it needs. So if it's missing someone with legal expertise, the board should be out looking for that person. The executive director can help, but that's how we do it. Every couple of years we have a board matrix that identifies, in a way that the board members put this info out there themselves, who they are and what their expertise is. And you can in a matrix, you can very quickly see the gaps. And then it's their job and our job to go and put some applicants forward.
And how easy or difficult do you find that process?
Well, Tim said it well. There are a lot of people who want to help.
Okay.
There are not, of that group of people who want to help, not all of them fill your matrix in the way that you need it to be filled. It's a delicate balance. You want people to be engaged in your work. Not everyone can sit in a board seat, and your board shouldn't be too big. So you as the team then have to figure out how to, for example, you could create committees. Committees can have people who are of the same backgrounds as board, but not a board member, but they're still engaged and they're helping out. And a committee can be a feeder program for your larger board. That's one way we've done it, where you can just get them to come down and volunteer. So there's a balance there in keeping people engaged.
I'm sure there's no shortage of ways to participate in the program, that's for sure.
Right.
Something else, early on that you should do is I think there's a transparency that goes across from the executive director down and then out to board and otherwise. It's just a transparency of the mission and the vision and the strategy, and saying, here's where we want to go, here are the pieces that we need, making sure everybody knows their place and how they are contributing to the success of the organization. I think sometimes that goes unsaid. I think appreciation is abound in a lot of organizations, but sometimes they're, I think, having a very transparent conversation on, this is where you fit, this is where you bring value, and this is essential for our organization. So.
And continuing on the financial side of things, how does a strong financial stewardship, what does that make possible for the nonprofits?
Well, I think good employees. I think good donors. As Will mentioned earlier, transparency. If somebody's looking to give to an organization, I think having a strong financial transparency and doing your due diligence to make sure that you have strong financials will bring in more donors.
And that peace of mind.
Yeah, it'll bring in quality board members. I mean, it really just is kind of one of those foundation pieces that help you to achieve then ultimately the goal of the nonprofit organization.
Yep.
Did you have something to say?
Yes, just on this note of stewardship, I agree with everything you just said, Tim. If Tim gives me $100 to benchmark program, but never hears from me again throughout the year, I guarantee you some other organization is going to cross Tim's radar, and next year his $100 is going to go to them. Stewardship for us is making sure all those financial pieces are in place, but also just asking Tim if he wants to come down here sometime. Tim, thanks so much for that $100. I'm not sure if you've ever been to Benchmark, but if you want to stop in, I'm there most weekdays, Monday through Thursday, 5 to 7 p.m. Here's my cell phone. If you want to come visit, I'd love that. I mean, come on. What's it going to take you? 30 seconds to type that in? Because probably whatever platform Tim gave on captured his cell phone. You just send him a text. Yep. So the stewardship piece is people have to know you a little bit. People give to other people in truth, not to programs. They got to be the people behind the program.
The invitation on itself is just a gesture that I think goes a long way.
Yeah.
And once people have that emotional connection to the organization, they're definitely more likely to continue that stewardship, like you had
Agreed.
mentioned. Well, this has been fantastic. I've loved it. It's been very helpful hearing more about the program. So where can people learn more about Benchmark?
Well, they can come down here.
Yes,
We're at 102
there you
South
go.
Prince Street.
Yeah.
Open gym is free and available at night. We welcome people to come down and see it 5 to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and Friday 3 to 5. We have a website too.
Yes.
There's lots of ways to reach out through the website. If you want to order T-shirts for your company or some venue, there's an apparel button on the website. You can click that. The order comes through to us. But most importantly, come on down and see the program for yourself.
And you have a podcast, right?
And we've got a podcast
Got
now.
the podcast, all the social medias.
Yep.
So same with the Walz Group. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So people will be able to check this video out and more videos in the future. So we wanted to thank both guests. Appreciate your time learning more about this awesome program, how the Walz Group works with nonprofits to really continue stewardships within nonprofits and making sure that their best foot is forward. So thank you both for
Pleasure,
joining
Will.
us.
Excellent. Good to meet you, Tim.
Good to meet
All
you.
right.
Great job.